Good morning. Today we will discuss another important issue in internal security, the left-wing extremism and insurgency in northeastern India. These two are the major threat factors which we have in internal security within the classification of insurgency. And we know the difference between terrorism and insurgency. One of the important aspect of insurgency is that it has a local or mass support, right? So in that way, the most important factor is that the uh, vulnerability of the masses increases in case if these insurgents turn against another section of population, right? So we'll see how these left-wing extremism, insurgency originated and how it has been uh, growing into a largest threat in internal security for India. So as far as questions are concerned, there are many questions which are there, especially with the left-wing extremism that was largely focused on, and because it's one of the largest threats what India has. And another area is the insurgency in northeastern India. It was also asked, but largely when you see, they'll ask about the causes or why it is so, suggest measures, and so on. And whatever may be the difficulty of the question, all the three comes in this particular case. Okay, you can see that what are the determinants. Okay, so what strategy we should, and what approach or strategy we should, and they'll give some example and say why it is happening, what is the corrective strategies. So all these are almost same. Okay, so apart from that, we have um, what do you call the article 244, so which deals with the scheduled areas and so on. So analyze the impact of non-implementation of the schedule, and that too with respect to left-wing extremism, and then northeastern India and so on with respect to major reasons behind this particular survey. So, so with this backdrop, so you can find answers in these discussion with respect to these questions. So first we begin with what do you call the left-wing extremism, and in this left-wing extremism, we can see when Dr. Manmohan Singh was a prime minister, in one of the gatherings or conference, um, he rightfully mentioned that the greatest threat to India was left-wing extremism, because when he uttered the statement way back in 2006-7, left-wing extremism was really at its peak, and it was called as Red Corridor. Okay, which means in India there will be a continuous stretch of the Maoist or left-wing extremism affected regions from northern east till the southern regions up to Telangana and Andhra Pradesh. So they had such a vast presence, and the cadres were around 30 to 40,000 people, and they have a massive strongholds. So how we tackled it and why they were in this particular peak and what is the status now, we will see. As on now, so as the discussion takes place now in 2022, this particular total affected region, it is now at 70 in the total aspect in 10 states out of the 28 states what we have. But we have 25 most affected districts among 5 states, okay, or within the 5 states. Among this particular 10, 5 states have most affected districts, which are 25 out of the 70. First, we will understand why we call it as left-wing extremism instead of Naxalism or Maoism. What is basically? Naxalism is a generic term because it comes from a the name originates from a tribal peasant uprising which we had in 1967 in Naxalbari village in Siliguri division, Darjeeling district in West Bengal. So that is the reason why we call it as Naxals or Naxalbaris, or we call them as Naxalism as such. But now it is not only in that particular region, it is spread across and the ideas are different, they have different groups. So we don't call them by the name Naxalism or Naxals in general, though in common parlance we try to use it. But largely we try to use them in what do you call Naxal, because in common parlance, general parlance, and so on. But as far as Maoists are concerned, Maoists are cadres who fall under the category of the followers of Mao principles. You know, Mao Zedong, the Chinese premier, and there was a party called Communist Party of India, Maoist. Okay, the cadres of that particular party, we call it as Maoist. Okay, so they have the idea of Mao Zedong, that is armed peasant struggle. Okay, armed peasant struggle. Okay, so that we call it as Mao Zedong's principle, basic principle. So Maoists are those who follow the principles of Mao under the banner of Communist Party of China, India, Maoist. So when you put all Maoists are Naxalites, because in India they form this particular group. But not all Naxalites are Maoists, because there are Naxalites who are not cadres in this particular party, CPI Maoist, right? So naturally, we don't call Maoist because we are not targeting Maoist, we are targeting Naxalites, okay? And Naxalites means it is not only within the regions of West Bengal, we are trying to go with all ideas. So, and you can also see there are many different ideas behind this Naxal movement. So it's not only Maoist and so on. So we call, since it is left ideology, so it is left wing. Since it is extremist behavior, we have extreme ideology. So we call them as left wing extremism. Okay, basically it is a tribal insurgency, which mostly tribal in the sense tribal peasants. Okay, so there will be tribal peasants, Adivasis and tribal peasants. So that's the reason why we call it as left-wing extremism. So left-wing extremism, left ideology with the extreme thoughts, right? Extreme actions, violence, and so on. And they are actually a socio-economic movement with the political objective. Okay, so it's a socio-economic movement. That means it is rooted in socio-economic causes. So when you go into their issues, you can find social issues, economic issues predominant. To solve this milieu, they try to capture the political power and they want to establish their ideas based on Marx to be present there. So their political ideas want to correct this social and economic milieu. So in that region, it's a socio-economic origin, but a political with objective. Okay, so we'll see what. So as far as ideology, largely Maoist ideology will be there, because Maoist ideology means armed peasant struggle capturing the state power. And when you learn about Chinese Revolution in 1949 or even after the Cultural Revolution and so on, it is Maoism with the peasant power. They captured the state and they had the People Republic of China. So with that idea, we have this particular Maoism set in, right? And what they do is they have a protracted people's war. What is that protracted people's war? It is they try to showcase that it is a people's war. It is not the war of the Naxals. People themselves trigger and they try to capture power. They themselves want to have that particular political power enjoyed by them. But actually, the trigger will be from the left wing extremists, what they do. And they believe that the political power grows out of the barrel of gun. So only the barrel of gun will provide the political power. It is the bullet, not ballot. Okay, so that is the idea what they have. So they believe in bullet, not on ballots. Okay, or not in bullet ballots. But we don't believe in bullet. We try to believe ballot. Okay, so that's the idea of democracy. This is the problem what they have. But as far as their objective, political objective is concerned, they want to establish Indian People's Democratic Federal Republic. Thereby, their ideas and principles and ideologies are going to work in favor of the socio-economic issues what they face. Okay, so this is the basic idea or basic objective why left-wing extremism exists, right? So we'll see stages. There are totally 4 stages or phases through which the left-wing extremism originated or evolved in India. So what are they? So the first formative stage was 1967 to 75. This is the first stage where the original tribal peasant movement, which happened in Naxalbari village in Siliguri division, Darjeeling district, and in West Bengal. So that was the most northernmost region, right? You know, West Bengal happens to be like this, right? So approximately. So in this region, near Sikkim, near Assam, okay, so the borders of Bihar, Bangladesh. So this region, the Siliguri corridor, which happens, so from there it started spreading, and that was by Charu Majumdar and Kanu Sanyal. So these two were the most important leaders of that stage, and they formed the All India Coordination Committee of Communist Revolutionaries, which means there were many ideologies, many identities which had this particular left wing. Because at that time itself, we had many ideas in India. There were radicals among the left. We call it as left. Okay, in West Bengal, we have Radical Socialist Party, Revolutionary Socialist Party. Okay, so we have CPI, we have CPI Marxist. Okay, we have CPI Maoist, we have CPI Marxist Leninist. Okay, so there were many such divisions what we have in the left wing. So in that way, what happens? This particular ideas. They were coordinated in 1968, and in 1969 they formed a new Marxist-Leninist party known as CPIML. And slowly, what happened during the early stages of emergency and during the phase of emergency, they had some issues. They had charges against Charu Majumdar and so on. They started splitting. Okay, so there were many splits which happened among the the wings of extremists. So ultimately, what happened? They started spreading across various states in various names. Okay, so various states had various names of Naxals, and that's the reason we call them as left-wing extremists. So we had people who are group, we had some CPI ML, we had CPI Maoist, and so on. There are many such factions which came in, and not only that, they started having the war. So the Protractor People's War against the state. And not only that, they started expanding to Bihar, Andhra Pradesh, that United Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, okay, Chhattisgarh. At the time, it was not Chhattisgarh, it was Madhya Pradesh. And later, when Bihar was divided, when we had Madhya Pradesh bifurcated, we had Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand. So they became the notoriously core belt of left-wing terror. And later, from 1975 to 1990s, they were strongly rooting themselves in different areas. They started liberating even. Okay, they started liberating areas because what they try to do, they try to form social organizations, they try to influence people, they try to take up arms, They will recruit people. They target the government bureaucracy. They have a protracted war. They liberate a place. Okay, and that liberated place will be declared as a place where the Naxal rule or the left-wing terror rule will be implemented. So this is how they have a modus operandi and they try to do it. So every state had started facing this particular menace, and Andhra Pradesh took the lead. Okay, they started having greyhounds. Okay, the police force named as greyhounds. They started attacking the people who are group and others. So 2004 was the peak. So what happened in 2004 onwards when the state started retaliating? The separate groups couldn't withstand. So what happened? They started having merger of factions since 2004, and all these they formed a Maoist Communist Center of India, which was formed by CPI, and people were grouped all aspects merged together, and they started having a new face. Okay, so United Terror happened, and that is the reason why it was so peak. And in 2004, many such attacks, many brutal attacks. You know, in 2005-6, we lost around a batch of CRPF Jawans, certified Jawans were just bombarded. So massive attacks were there. Okay, and they even had a strategic united front against India. At that time, it was still green in the minds of the people. When I started the preparation, at that time it was a peak of this issue. The Mao leaders, especially his name is Kishanji, right? He called for a meeting, right? The villagers, 50,000 people, the villagers, they gathered in the villages dominated by Maoists. At that time, the talk of the town was that when the government of India calls them, they are not assembling, whereas the villagers go by the words of Naxals. So such was the case. So the people were thronging behind the Naxal or the left-wing extremists. So that was the reason why at that time Manmohan Singh rightly pointed out that it is the greatest threat, right? So what happened? They started attacking more military personnel. The CRPF Jawans were losing. Even people were caught on fire. So the Naxal slightly diverted itself. It started even targeting people who are not supporting them. So largely it became a terror. Okay, so the bloodhounds. Ultimately, at the peak of its, what we call it as Red Corridor, in 2007-9, 180 districts were there under left-wing terror. Okay, and there were few liberated areas like Bastar district and so on, where you can't even enter. There won't be any official missionary of government of India at that place. Dantewada. Okay, the exact place is Dantewada. Uh, the former minister of the state, Congress personnel, an MP, 13 other, including the sons, they were all killed in a ambush. Okay, so massive attacks were there, and in Jharkhand, political instability was there. Okay, now only the political stability was there, but unfortunately that was also shaken up. So for 15 years, Jharkhand didn't have a stable government. 15 years, 15 long years. There was even a case where an independent MLA was supported by all parties to become CM, Madhukoda, right? Who almost even involved in corruption of 4,000 crores. So an independent, supported by all parties and had a cabinet running. Think how it would be. So ultimately, Jharkhand was most affected because politically it was not stable. People didn't have a stable bureaucracy. It's all a bubble kind of. So worst phenomena happened. So the government of India took the lead in 2009. They said enough is enough. They had an all-out offensive launch. It was because of the special commando force called Cobra, and they had unofficially named Operation Green. Okay, so this was a very notorious hunt. And this really broke the backbone of the left-wing terror. And after that only there were many surrenders. They came to negotiation table. The first thing is that they need to stop Operation Green Hunt and so on. So almost Naxalism slowly faced the heat of the government of India, and rapidly between 2009 to 2014, almost it came down rapidly, and that's the reason you can find almost less than half of it is now under left-wing terror. So more than half of the districts have been liberated from the left-wing terror. So that is how the offensive launch was. There were even state governments which came up with a certain. Uh, till then, what happened was we had only private army kind of uh, Ranveer Sena. What we had it in Bihar, the landlords they had their own armed men targeting the Naxals. Salwa Judum, okay? uh, community policing which was done by the locals, tribals, which was started. At that time, many were supporting. So when we were against this particular concept, many were criticizing. In a group discussion, it was discussed. And when I discussed, it was actually the state's wrong. It's a state violence. It will not work it out. And actually, at that time, it was a romanticizing of Salwa Judum. It happened, but really, you can see that Supreme Court striking down this particular thing later because it's naturally state cannot propagate a private violence which can happen from the community. It's always dangerous, and this always had in this particular case. So Salwa Judum, all these were tried up, and setting it all aside, the all-round offense was made, and thus the reduction of affected areas came down. So it was coming down rapidly. But now, after 2017, 19, okay, especially there was, demonetization. They said demonetization resulted in massive um, definancing the Naxals and so on. There are many such issues which were talked about. And then we had slowdown in 2019, and 2019-20 we had COVID, so tribals were largely affected. Slowly the government policies which ensured that there are many industries or mining opening up in forest and so on, all these started resurgence of these Naxals in the regions of Telangana, West Bengal, Madhya Pradesh, even certain areas like Gujarat. New parts are opened. Gujarat, parts of Kerala, Tamil Nadu borders. So in many other areas, the resurgence is felt. Even in Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, slowly regaining their roots of the past. So resurgence is there. We need to be alert and we need to be vigilant in addressing these left-wing terror. So this is how the evolution happened. So you can see this map in 2007, how it is. Okay, so that's a peak. This is what you call it as red corridor in 2007. Okay, so the red color indicates the severely affected areas and the districts and places where it is. So you can see how vast it is, and you can even have some bases which are found in other areas, okay, outside the regions. But later, slowly, in 2013, that means in around 7 years, 2007 to 13, you can see a massive reduction of severely affected areas, and almost only the fringe areas are marginally affected areas are there, and the core areas were reduced. And from 2013 to 2014 and 18, you can see a massive reduction in almost in southern areas. It has been done away with. Only the core belt where the roots, original roots were there, that alone is present. Okay. Even in Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, so many areas have been liberated. Only Chhattisgarh and Odisha has a core area where we have the Naxal part, right? So that is how we can see how far, that's the reason why you can see after 2013, okay, you can see Chhattisgarh advertising for tourism. Previously, you don't have Chhattisgarh calling tourist. Only after 2013, you can see in Incredible India campaign, Chhattisgarh started having campaigns. Why? Because major parts have been relieved of, and at least some areas they could ensure protection of tourism. So they started having, right? So you can see the maps in which how we are affected and how we are now. But unfortunately, the resurgence is happening in many areas, these areas where the roots were already present, but it's not ready to dry up. They are trying to bud again. So we need to nip them in the initial stages. Otherwise, we should not revert it back to this particular part. There. Okay. So why and how? Say causes, it's almost same causes, but we'll see some specific causes also. So how the modus operandi is, that is what they do. Actually, what they do is according to the the elements where they try to handle, they do it. Say for example, officials. The officials are the core enemies of um, the left-wing terror. Okay, because they are the representative of the government structure. They wanted to approve these officials. Naturally, they are ruthless towards these guys. Okay, so what they try to do is the left-wing extremists. They have a overground activist called fellow travelers, and these are actually the informers about the police and operation of police to the left-wing extremists. They have a very strong network of overground activists, and they never um, uh, really reveal who they are. Okay, it's a very secretive operations what they have. Okay, so that's what. And then, in case if there are any police informers in the villages, if there are any tribals informing villages, they are very ruthless against them. In the middle of the villages, they will be brutally beaten up by wooden logs, thrashed up, and whipped off, and they were brutally killed by the Maoists or the left-wing extremists. So it triggered the fear. Okay, so the fear psychosis always were present. Many abductions of officials will be done. Government properties will be targeted and they will be destructed. Say, for example, it may be cell phone towers, officials' quarters, and so on. Everything will be, even roads. The problem is that they will target infrastructure also. Okay, so everything will be targeted and attacked. And this is towards officials. They also run a parallel government where they have some tax collection called extortion. They do have cash couriers, cutouts in the sense they, if there is an industry, the representative of the Maoist will come to your industry. You need to pay them, otherwise they will just bomb the industry and go. Okay, so they have the people court, kangaroo court, where their own justice will prevail, and they have their own law where the law will be used for having the justice. There won't be any rule of law kind of what they have. It's more arbitrary on their case. That we call it as kangaroo courts. And then as far as assault, they use many type of assaults. Predominantly, they will be guerrilla warfare tactics will be used because they are very less in number when they compare to the CRP of Javan. So naturally, they will have an ambush attack or guerrilla warfare. Okay. Usually, what they do, they will have the explosive devices, high intensity explosive devices, where it will be a kind of mining. Okay, so where all the mining areas happen, if you want to stop mining, they have landmines. Okay, the roads, in the bungalows, in various other areas, they will have landmines. Okay, they even do jailbreaks. That is, if many people are arrested from Maoist, in Bihar it happened. A large number of left-wing activists, they will just throng from the forest with weapons. They will attack the jail and the jailers. They will break open and release all the prisoners. Okay, so jailbreaks. There were many popular jailbreaks which were there, especially in Bihar. Okay? And same way, they also have some communities. So who are the communities? They are the frontal organizations. So any political or a terrorist organization, they have one soft organization. Okay, the frontal organization. These organizations are those who are called as influencers. They try to influence the society through various messages about exploitation and so on by the state. They try to create a narrative parallelly against the state in India. Okay, that's what Manmohan Singh also says. Say open society have freedom, and this open society, freedom and norms of open society are not open only to the citizen, but also to the non-state actors. That's more important. The social media is free. You can free to use, but it will be used by the frontal organizations to do so effectively. Okay. And when you try to regulate it, these are the organizations in the garb of freedom. They shout, have a hue and cry, and so. Clear? Then have social code of conduct. Okay, these communities will ensure that the social code of conduct is ensured by the people in the villages. In case if it is not followed, they will be brutally punished. And they have a lobby of intellectuals. They have revolutionary base areas where these base areas will act as a core areas where they try to enforce their ideas. And so in this particular area, only the lobby of intellectuals, you had the concept of urban Naxals, which were poked up by the present government. Okay, so there is nothing called as urban Naxals as such, but still they are the intellectuals who are targeted by the thing. Okay, so whatever it may be, these are some of the issues what we have in this. Yeah. So these are modus operandi what we had in this particular case. So we have always found the various causes, even in the first class or the first session, what we had in the second session, what we had. We talked about various causes which triggers terrorism, insurgency, whatever it may be. That is government deficit, governance deficit, and various other factors, economic, social, culture. All these you can write, okay, as a cause. But for left-wing extremism, what is a core issue? It is the jal, jungle, jameen. Okay, so water access, forest access or forest rights, and then jameen is land. So water is, they talk about livelihood. Okay, so water represents livelihood, forest represents their forest right, occupation rights, and land becomes their primary right. Okay. So when they are when their lands are encroached and they are displaced from one area to another area. So that is what. So Jal, Jungle, Jameen are the basic issues of the Naxals, or why the Naxals are having upper hand. And usually they are targeting the rural areas or tribal and agricultural laborers. So they will be farming their cadres. Whereas for urban areas, they will be the middle class youth who have much aspiration, right? Middle class youth have a much aspiration, and also lead to much of exploitation by the people in power. So this particular middle class youth, they also get disillusioned, and they can be easily targeted by the state, right? So that's the idea how it is. I mean, targeted by the left wing extremists. So these are some of the targets. Even we have some specialized defense forces by the state. So you have Andhra Pradesh, they gave the first specialized force against the left-wing terror called the Greyhounds. They were popular. And based on that Greyhounds only, Chhattisgarh developed the Black Panthers, Basteria Battalion, Jharkhand has Jaguar Warriors, and Union government had Cobra. So this Cobra is a commando force, okay, commando battalion for retaliations, and these were also supreme forces, but also modeled on the lines of Greyhounds. Okay, And this Cobra is one of the most important forces which brought down the infestations of Naxals under Operation Green Hunt. The first such operation was happening in Indira Gandhi's period in during the second half of regime, Operation Steeple Chase. Okay, so that was the first such operation which happened against Maoist. It was a complete arrest. She has arrested more than 10,000 to 20,000 people who were under Maoist kind of. But again, it led to sympathizing, and they started having more and more such recruits. And then in West Bengal, we had Operation Barga, and Green Hunt is an unofficial name. It is not an official name, but Green Hunt was there. And in Saranda Forest, we had Operation Anaconda, and so on. So many such operations were done. But the problem in these operations are that the state involved in violence. Okay, against whom? Against left-wing extremists. But the problem is that the crossfire, they try to have the villages. So the villagers are those who died in the crossfire between the state and the thing. Especially you can see in Saranda forest, in the Jharkhand Jhatisgarh zone, Saranda region. What happened? It was around 900 square km of land. They had a fight. Where the invasion was happening or Operation Anaconda was happening, and in that particular situation, there were around 20 villages. Okay, so each village had around 50 to 100 families. So there were around 2,000 villages to 3,000 villages living in this 20 villages. When the Operation Anaconda began, the Cobra forces were ruthlessly suppressing the left-wing activists. But the villages were, few villages died in the crossfire, and they started dispersing around. Okay, so they got displaced, and they ran for lives, right? And the operation came to an end with the successful pinning down of Naxals. But what immediately the government should have done? They should have called on the villagers. The villagers should be provided with adequate support, socio-economic and other education, health support, and should have been resettled in that region. Correct. But ultimately, what happened? The villagers evacuated the villages because of the exodus. So after the victorious movement, the government immediately surrendered that particular Saranda forest to Jindal Group for mining iron. Right? Within few weeks. So what happens? The government doesn't even have a basic tendency to address the issues of the villages. They never took care of the villages, but immediately they started penning down MOUs in these villages. So it was harshly criticized by the public and civil society as a corporate war, a war for donating corporate lands, and they try to evict the villages in the garb of fighting against terror. Okay, so usually they will use this technique. Say, for example, tiger reserve. Okay, so if you want to evict the people, they will say this is going to be declared as tiger reserve, so you need to evacuate. In tiger reserve, no people can reside. So that's how previously olden days they will do. So same way in the garb of anti-terror operations, they are trying to target the life of the livelihood of the people. Naturally, what happened? Already they are war torn and they are ruined now, exploited now. Again, they will support Naxals one. Okay, so that is a problem. What it is going to be. So government had some basic approaches in these terror tactics. What they did was Samadhan strategy. Okay, smart leadership, aggressive strategy, motivation and training, actionable intelligence, dashboard-based performance indicators, harnessing technology, action plan for each theater. That means every Naxal-affected area, what will be the action plan, and no access to terror financing. Okay, so financing the Naxal should be brought down. So these are a strategy which was given by Prime Minister recently when he talked about left-wing extremism. Clear? And Government of India also takes up a holistic approach. So it is a two-pronged integrated approach and a holistic approach where you try to provide areas of security, ensure areas of security and ensure good governance, both the ways. And we also framed a national policy and an action plan with a multi-pronged strategy where security forces will be provided with a greater capacity and presence, and better operational strategies are going to be formed to avoid loss of people, and interstate cooperation should be there, because when Chhattisgarh launches operation, the Naxals will move to Jharkhand. When Jharkhand acts, Odisha acts, West Bengal. So likewise, they shift on. So instead, we try to have this particular idea of what we can have in a better way. Yeah. So interstate coordination should be there. Then we need to have better monitoring of development schemes, because lack of development or development deficit or the development problems, okay, development divides are the issues which they face. So we need to do away with this. And then ensuring rights and the entitlements of the locals. So locals should be acknowledged with their rights, and community policing will start. Okay. So community policing means not salvajudum kind of. Here the community will be provided with certain policing capabilities. They try to get training and so on. They try to get awareness about what it is and why you should not support a terrorist and so on. So likewise, it's clear. And same way, we have some specific measures which are taken, which is banning of CPI Maoist, strengthening intelligence mechanism, interstate coordination, tackling the improvised explosive devices, which are high intensity devices. We have specialized reserve battalions, that is a Cobra kind of, and aspirational district program. So this is actually one of the best schemes what we have, and we have also discussed in various forums. Aspirational district programs where around 170 districts were identified in backward regions for development. So they have definitely will have a greater impact on this road connectivity, Roshini, skill development, Kaushal Vikas, and so on. So all these are specific measures addressing the military aspect, then socio-economic aspect. Okay, so in both aspects we try to address this particular problem holistically. Similarly, we also have some schemes directly implemented by Ministry of Home Affairs in the left-wing areas, where we had some security-related expenditure scheme. We have fortified police station scheme, special infrastructure scheme, which converges all other infrastructure programs, civic action programs, central assistance programs in these regions. So this is all about what you call the left-wing extremism. Clear? Fine. The next one is insurgency in northeastern India. Insurgency in northeastern India, why the northeast alone, right? You can northeastern states, you have Arunachal, Assam, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, Meghalaya. In this, except for Manipur and Tripura, all other states came from Assam. Okay, because Manipur and Tripura are princely states, and later they became union territories and states of India. Whereas Arunachal, Nagaland, Meghalaya, Mizoram, everything came out from Assam. Okay, so naturally, when this bifurcation happened, all these bifurcation happened with respect to some rebellions or separatist movements, right? So to quell away the separatist movement haphazard, we try to provide some space to the people. So naturally, northeastern states had large-scale interstate border disputes. If India has around 12 interstate border disputes, almost majority, or not only majority, 90% it is there in northeastern states, right? This is one important reason why always, because there will be insurgents or radical groups against Arunachal, against Nagaland, against Manipur, against Meghalaya, against Mizoram, against Tripura. So naturally that will trigger factors. Okay. The next important thing is the international border. You know that China, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Myanmar share state borders, international border with the states in India. And Bangladesh has the longest state border, international state border, which is there with West Bengal and Meghalaya, Tripura, right? And Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, Assam. So in that way, what happens? Many of the infiltration happens from Bangladesh. That is one. Another thing, Arunachal has a large borders, a large line of borders with China. Nepal and Bhutan have their own. Nepal, so the Gorkhaland, Sikkim, those regions. And Myanmar in these regions of Arunachal, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, all these regions, we have Myanmar. So international borders, international problems. Why? Because you end up with illegal migrants, you end up with ethnic clashes, you have many other problems which triggered by international border disputes. And then we have the Siliguri corridor. Siliguri corridor is the one which is very, very a choke point, an important choke point for India. So a threat, direct threat to that, again, it becomes vulnerable. So why insurgency is there? Then free movement of people from Nepal and Bhutan. Bhutan and Nepal borders are highly porous. Okay. Then infiltration from Bangladesh, the Gorkhaland problem. So all these are increasing the vulnerability of the states to join hands with the insurgents. When this vulnerability is there, we also had some core factors that triggered insurgency. One is multi-ethnic region. So within Nagaland, you can see 63 tribes are there, and one tribe community is separately now evolving. So totally 64 tribes are there. They have issues with the 64 tribes itself, right? Now the entire Naga tribe have issues with Assamese. Kukis have issues with Assamese, right? So ultimately, the various tribal groups of Assam, they have their own multiplicity and multi-ethnicity. Both multi-ethnicity will clash each other. So highly multi-ethnic, and they are intertwined ethnically. So if you hit out a Mizo, the entire Mizo will stand by them. Okay, so that's a problem, what we have. And then we have complex topography. The terrain is very, very difficult. You know, the northeastern hills, which are higher and densely packed. Okay, so that's a problem. Then we have development deficit. We don't have much of development in these northeastern region, and governance deficit is there. You don't have connectivity. Okay, so you know that Nagaland is now for the first time going to be connected with railways, Dimapur, Nagaland, Dimapur, Kohima route. And then we had airports. No, not much airports are there. Okay, anything you need to go to Guwahati and come. So even if a Naga tribe is having problem in Assam, they have to reach Guwahati and then only they could reach any other place. So likewise, you have different problems, different issues in the governance, and therefore self-determinism is one of the key. And in tribal society, self-determinism is a key factor. And illegal immigration is a strong factor for this particular issue. Yeah. So as far as interstate border issues, you could have read it in the other aspects also. Assam has border issues with almost all states. Assam Mizoram dispute, where the demarcation in Chachar and Lushai Hills is a problem. Assam Arunachal issues, where Arunachal claims some traditional tracks, but Assam says it has an already transport, so you can't claim. Assam Meghalaya has a dispute over Mikir Hills or Karbi Anglong, where the Kasi and Jaintia hills are formed. The other side of Kasi Jaintia hills, where the Kasi and Jaintia tribes have issues with the Karbi tribes. Then we had Assam, Nagaland, where the Nagas claim, and the Naga territory in 1866, they want to have their own country called Nagaland, but unfortunately, it is not worthy of because they need to claim from India as well as Myanmar and all other areas the Greater Naga limb they wanted to create. Okay, so they actually wanted to create Greater Naga limb. So in that case, what happens? We have a larger problems associated with the Naga tribes also. Yeah. And then another issue is inner line permit. What is inner line permit? Inner line permit is something where you need to enter that particular state with inner line permit with a pass or prior permission. Without prior permission, you cannot have. Whereas Arunachal, Nagaland, and Mizoram have this particular permit. Whereas others also ask for, okay, Assam and other districts, they also want this particular inner line permit to be implemented in those areas also. So in Nagaland, they wanted to have Greater Nagaland or Greater Nagalim. For that, a terrorist organization called National Socialist Council for Nagaland was created by A.M. Faisal. Okay. Later in 1947, they had a 9-point agreement followed by a Shimla Accord and Naga Peace Accord. This Naga Peace Accord is a point of contention, a bone of contention. This we'll discuss later. But in these two areas, they entered into a ceasefire. And as per the ceasefire, they started having dialogues through which they settled for state of Nagaland. So when they settled for state of Nagaland, this NSCN got split, Movaya and Kaplang group. Okay. Now we have only NSCNM. Okay, Isaac Movaya. அவர் தான் இருக்காரு, கப்லாங் இறந்துட்டார். ஸோ இது மாதிரி ஸ்பிளிட் ஆகிட்டே இருக்கு, வீக்கன் ஆகிட்டே இருக்கு. And in Manipur, we had Meitei nationalism. The Meitei tribes in the plains versus Naga and Kuki tribes in the hills. இவங்க ரெண்டு பேருக்கு நடுவில் we have problems. And the United National Liberation Front, we have another group of terror organization. We had People Liberation Army of Manipur. So all these are tribal, ethnic tribal groups which resorted to what do you call the terror tactics, right? Same way in Assam, we had ULPA, the most notorious United Liberation Front of Assam, and they had Bodo Liberation Tiger Force for Bodo nationals. They have National Democratic Front of Bodoland, who wanted independent nations for Bodo. So there were such a huge amount of problems, but only a couple of states were resolved. One is Tripura, another one is Mizoram. Tripura, the National Liberation Front of Tripura and all Tripura Tiger Force, they were solving the problems with the union government, and they had their own tribal councils established. Same way Mizoram, Mizo National Front, the ruling party, even today, they had got it resolved, and they went on peacefully with the formation of Mizoram. But the problem which is unresolved was the Garo problem in Meghalaya, the Bodo and Assamese issues in Assam, and the Meitei problem in Manipur and so on. The Mizoram, Manipur and Naga problem in the Nagaland. Okay, so all these are still there, but Naga Peace Accord is a actual problem which is burning now. Yeah. So what are the actual problems which are present now? Okay, though these are some of the insurgencies which we have, and though the insurgencies is under control, Definitely, insurgency is under control. And that's the reason why the union government talks about repealing the AFSPA completely. So Rohingya crisis triggered one of the most important problems, especially the immigration, illegal immigration of Rohingya from Myanmar to Bangladesh or to other northeastern states. That is one. Then Bru refugee crisis. Bru are tribes which are there in Mizoram, and later they went on for Tripura for settlement because there was a civil war kind of in Mizoram. And now Tripura wants them to resettle them here. Okay, who came back, who came to Tripura in 1990s? The government wanted to resettle them in Mizoram, but Mizoram is not ready to accept them as of now. Okay, though there are Bru tribes there in Mizoram, so few have went. They say let them be there. Okay, so that's a issue because here the resources crunch is there. At the end of the day, Government of India, Mizoram, Tripura, and Bru leaders, they try to settle down the issues, but still the settlement was not up to the mark. Okay, that's a problem. It is a process undertaken. Naga Peace Accord, everything was done in 2015. The Government of India said that they have settled with the Naga peace dialogue and settled with an accord. But at that time, the governor of uh, uh, Nagaland, according to the NSCN, Isaac Muvaya, so he said that the governor of the state had betrayed by circulating different copies to different Naga groups. That is, the main word which is there with the main copy or the main document which was shared with NSCN was not shared to other Naga leaders and union government. Thereby, the important word which they called for, that is the Naga tribes, they wanted to have a separate state. They will settle with the separate state which is existing now with the settled borders. They need to have a flag, they need to have a state anthem, they need to have a separate emblem and so on. Okay, so along with Indian emblem. So this is not a big deal. It is always there with the thing, and they want to have it. But some technically the issues, the wordings have been uh, tinkered by the governor, and naturally the peace accord was stalled, and they withdrew from the peace process. Okay, and that is the reason why unceremoniously he was transferred from Nagaland, and some issues were there with this. And as far as Bodo issue was that the Bodo land people, they wanted to have a Bodo territorial region which has to be set up under the schedule, and they had their own territorial issues wanted to be settled. The another major issue is that AFSPA, which is now set to be in the process of repealing, or at least the government is on the positive side of repealing. We will see this in detail later in the last chapter. But the thing is that this um, Armed Forces Special Power Act had various committees like Santosh Hegde Committee, Jeevan Reddy Committee, Verma Committee. Everybody wanted to either clip the wings of uh, Armed Forces Special Powers or want to repeal, like what Reddy or Verma said. But it's still present in many of the areas. But though Meghalaya, Tripura, they have come out with repealing the act. So anyway, we will see that how far it is going to be repealed from northeastern states, and how this repeal is going to affect the uh, insurgency in northeast, whether it is going to be silenced once for all or it is going to resurge. We don't know how far it is going to be as per ground reality would be. But these are some of the problems which are still there in the background of ceasefire with the insurgent tribes. Almost all Naga, including Naga and other Ulfa and others, Ulfa is completely ruined because the frontline leader was done away with. Assam Gana Parishad, which was erstwhile the student wing of Ulfa, they are not now supporting the Ulfa anymore. And one important thing is that this one, that is um, even Ulfa leaders, top leaders, middle rank leaders, second line leaders were eliminated. So resurgence is not there, it is not happening. So ultimately the problems are there in other forms. Okay, so these are some of the problems what we have in this regard with respect to northeastern states insurgency. Okay, so as far as measures, it's the same thing. What we did for the other terrorist organizations, we have the same thing. Deployment of CAPFs, okay, that is Central Armed Police Force, reimbursement of security-related expenditure to the states, that is financial assistance to the state. They try to have some reserve battalions, banning unlawful associations. Okay, so implementation of AFSPA. We have some surrender come rehabilitation policies, civic action programs, assistance to civilian victims. So there are many such assistance programs. But anyway, all these are just patch makers. But the reality is that the development progress, and that is the reason since 2005, special focus is being provided to northeastern region uh, until present. Okay, we started having many special programs with respect to northeast, so that we can do away with this issue in this particular case. Clear? So let's see how things are and how it is going to happen with this aspect, and the new problems and the repealing, especially the repealing of the AFSP is a milestone. If it is really happening, we have to see how far it is going to trigger the normalcy of the is going to happen, right? Let's see. So with this, we complete the major part of the internal security, the left-wing extremism, insurgency, and in the last session we did the other parts of interland terrorism and other aspects. Okay, in the coming sessions we will do cyber security and other aspects.